Hello every pony and welcome to Brony FanFics. Today, chapter 17 of Crisis Equestria. Last time, Red Velvet got supercharged and went crazy, and the way things were going, I was just kind of hoping a meteorite would come out of the sky and completely obliterate her. But, that doesn't seem to be happening, unfortunately. So yeah, let's get reading then. Crisis Equestria, Chapter 17, Insubordination. I rip your left leg out? Velvet yanked and jerked at Pinkie Pie's leg, eagerly awaiting the satisfying sensation and sound of bone and flesh snapping and ripping apart under the pressure of her empowered bloody appendage. She'd wanted to do this for days now, a nagging fantasy in the back of her head that now was made manifest. The eagerness she felt made her salivate uncontrollably. The terror in the air was absolutely palpable, from not just the problematic Pinhead, but from all her weak and helpless friends as well. She drank in their worries and fears like the liquid sustenance it was, letting it flow and strengthen her body and mind to levels she never imagined she was capable of. Scaring one little simpleton of a pony like Jetstream had been nothing compared to what it felt like to terrify an entire group of ponies that was much more powerful than he was. She could almost taste the blood flowing through Pinkie's veins, and she could certainly feel it pulsing rapidly through her grip. She was going to enjoy every second of... Suddenly, her tendril split apart inches away from Pinkie, and all the blood that was gripping the party pony evaporated into thin air with a hiss. Pinkie fell to the floor with a pained groan, and almost immediately began to struggle to get upright. Velvet drew the corroded tendril in question to her face and scrutinized it with intense confusion. At the split, the blood appeared to be burning, sizzling away like oil in a pan. She could feel a stinging pain coming from it, something she was quite unused to. Weird, she blinked. What gives? Oh well. You know what they say, if at first you don't succeed. She lashed out the tendril outwards. Try again! It was deflected away the second it got within inches of Pinkie's cringing form. And this time Velvet winced audibly as the burning sensation ripped straight through it and shot directly into her body. The appendage itself sputtered and spat as it collapsed under an unseen pressure, splashing harmlessly to the floor. She tried again with another lash, same result, only the burning was more intense and the blood didn't fizzle and die. It burst apart and painted the surrounding area in deep red. What is happening? She boomed, lashing multiple tendrils out all at once. They all crashed only a few scant inches away from her this time, exploding around her and coating her with her own visceral fluids. They'd slammed directly into a spherical barrier that glowed a silvery purple that now surrounded her like a prison, sparkling and bright, a shimmering beacon in the purest black that filled the cavern. From the darkness around her, a figure pierced a veil with a bright silver light and stepped to the edge of the barrier. Starlight Shadow was not at all pleased. "Red Velvet," she said firmly, "I do believe you have had your fill of excitement for the day. Stand down." Velvet glared with such a fiery intensity that her reddened eyes shimmered with anger, black pupils dilating to tiny specks in the black ooze that had been seeping from them, bubbling and popping like a boiling goo. "Boss, what in Equestria are you doing? I'm so close, so close. I can taste her fear. I can taste her blood. Let me out this instant. I need this, boss. I need to satisfy this urge." "Velvet," Starlight stirred. "Calm yourself. You are out of control. Have you forgotten who you are? What we came here to do? You would throw all that away for the temporary satisfaction of such a base desire." Velvet gnashed her teeth together and lashed out of the barrier. "How dare you! Let me out!" She ignored the intense burning the barrier was causing her, bashing blades and spikes against it in an attempt to cut through. The barrier flickered and sparked in places, weakening steadily from the assault. The more she lashed out against it, the more her bloody tendrils seemed to keep their integrity. She could see Pinkie Pie huddling behind Starlight, staring at her like she was some unfathomable beast come to destroy everything she held dear. Velvet so desperately wanted to see that fear made real that she was using up all of her reserves, dizzying herself from the loss of blood. She would break through Starlight's prison of light and drown that infuriating idiot of a party pony in so much blood that she'd never breathe again, or die trying. Starlight raised an eyebrow and grit her teeth. It would appear that you have engorged yourself with such an abundance of terror that you have grown in power. Exponentially, it would appear. I can see now why Father saw potential in you. You really are a murderous psychopath. So determined to slaughter and terrify that you would even stand up against my authority. She strengthened her magical charge, causing her horn to shine brighter. The barrier reinforced itself, gaining in luster and its texture, becoming a complex honeycomb network of magical plates that bounced and rebounded as Velvet struck at them. With every strike, every slash, every blow, the barrier adjusted itself to the pressure and tightened itself accordingly. A barrier prison spell at its finest, guaranteed to ensure that whoever or whatever was contained within would be contained with absolute certainty. Shut your stupid mouth and let me out, you worthless coward! Are you afraid to see what I can do? Are you? Starlight frowned dejectedly. Dear sister, I really cannot allow you to speak to me in such a manner. Need I remind you that I am the one Father placed in the position of authority? I am the all-powerful one. I do not fear you, no matter how strong you think you have become. And I will not say this again. Stand down now. Velvet roared from inside the bubble and even began to bash her own body against it. It'll tear you apart. No, I'll tear you apart. I'll tear you all apart. She shouted in the direction of her other comrades, who she could see through the darkness had gathered themselves in formation behind her. They all eyed her with trepidation. None of them knew she contained so much furious power when left unchecked. But truth be told, they were all a little more frightened of Starlight's shadow now. They'd heard countless times from the unicorn that the power she wielded was beyond their comprehension, and that if forced to use it against them, they would regret it. Starlight narrowed her eyes and shook her head. If you won't stand down of your own accord, then you leave me no choice, Velvet. I cannot allow a challenge to my authority to go unanswered. Starlight rooted her hooves into the cavern floor and briskly channeled her magic through her horn. Within moments the entire cave began to regain its luster, and the chill was removed from the air as Starlight overpowered Velvet's horror-inducing ambience. Velvet herself began to shrink back into the bubble, flinching away at the edges touching her and snapping at her body, with such intensity that it fired sparks outwards, beyond the bubble's rapidly constricting reach. Starlight turned to Pinkie Pie, her eyes aglow with white fire. Go on, whelp. Return to your friends. This one won't cause you any more grief today. Pinkie didn't even think to argue, and rushed as quickly as she could with her severe limp to where Rainbow Dash and Twilight were recovering. She crushed Rainbow Dash in a hug that knocked the Pegasus off balance, burying her face into Rainbow's mane and crying with all her might. Genuine tears of the purest sadness and worry, more so than she'd ever shed before. Oh, Dashy, she sniffed. I saw things. She made me see things. Hey, relax, Pinks. Rainbow replied quickly. I'm here now. You'll be... Not me, Dashy, you! All of you! Pinkie sobbed. Hey, Celestia, it was horrible. You were all dead. I can't get the visions out of my head. Come on, Pinks, Rainbow smirked. Nothing's going to make me kick the bucket just yet. Take it easy. Applejack, Flathoof, Tick-Tock, and the others all staggered and trotted and limped over as well, and took position around Twilight, who stood upright and simply stared at Starlight's shadow. Rarity was limp and weak, barely able to stay upright at all, and leaning on Applejack of all ponies for support, making the rough and tumble Earth pony, who was busying adjusting her hat back on her head, and might nervous. The hell happened to you, Rarity? The hey happened to you, Rarity? I'm terrible at this accent, but anyway. Applejack blinked. Y'all don't look so good. Oh my. Rarity breathed weakly. I feel like I nearly had the life drained right out of me. Well, at least you're still breathing, right? Applejack smiled weakly. And hey now, at least your dress don't look like it got hurt none. That's something, ain't it? Well, Rarity groaned as she looked herself over. At least there's that. Fleur raised an eyebrow. The hey happened to you, Lockwood? Walked into a furnace, it would seem. Lockwood coughed, brushing his shirt to rid it of burnt flecks. Remind me to pack fireproof clothing next time. He ran a hoof through his singed mane, and also tried to wipe some of the ash marks from his face. He truly did look like he'd gone and walked straight into a furnace. He supported a trembling Fluttershy with a wing that the other Pegasus, the wing that the other Pegasus took to with a frightened zeal. Desperate to have any pony close to keep her away from the encroaching darkness that was no longer there. She shivered and shook with worrying intensity. The cold from that horrible experience was making her feel weak. Her legs were numb and she could barely feel her wings at all. Her eyes darted rapidly around the cave, desperate to make sure nothing was going to sneak up on her again. Is every pony okay? Twilight asked, not averting her gaze from Starlight's brightly glowing figure, which gained luminosity by the second. Twilight was as determined and focused as ever, but now was more concerned with the incredible amount of power she could sense. She'd been able to detect Starlight's impressive magical force before, but Starlight was always keeping it under wraps, preferring instead to relegate her duties to the others of her party. Even when the unicorn had illuminated the entire cavern, the magic had been minuscule and unreadable. But now it was here, out in the open. Twilight was staggered. She'd never felt anything like it in all her years, and this included seeing Princess Celestia at work in raising the sun. As we're gonna be, Rainbow groaned as she flexed her wings. Thanks for the fix-up, Twi. I still hurt like hell, but hey, at least they work. Pinkie watched in worry, making gestures with her hooves as if she wanted to force Rainbow to keep her wings tucked in and out of danger. No pony else is hurt or anything, are they? Lockwood asked, bringing Fluttershy over to Applejack and, specifically, Rarity. The unicorn smiled weakly and nodded to Fluttershy, who hesitated to get out from under Lockwood's wing, but did at the very least nod back in response. Rarity was relieved that Fluttershy was thankfully physically unharmed, relatively speaking, and regretted that in her current state she wasn't able to do more to comfort her. I think we could all use a little patch-up, Flathearth said as he cracked his neck. Yes, I definitely wish I was in better shape. What the hey was all that? Applejack asked. That, Starlight called over, was just a taste of the power of my dear sister is capable of when she is operating at her peak, it would seem. Absolutely outstanding. If only she could learn some self-control, isn't that right, Velvet? Velvet nodded with disdain from inside the bubble. Yes. Now, are you prepared to behave yourself and return to formation, or am I required to continue my display and prove to you why Father entrusted me to keep you all in line? Yes, sir. Good. She released the barrier, and Velvet walked with a melancholy gait back over to the others, who all, including Grayscale Force, took a step or two back and away from her. Starlight turned back to Twilight's group, her horn still glowing as bright as a star and her body brimming with power. Well then, Sparkle, you've witnessed merely a sampling of what my subordinates are capable of. The power against yours is already insurmountable even when specifically ordered to utilize less than their fullest might. But even all of them combined together with the full capacities of their powers at their disposal does not compare to the might that I can wield with but a fraction of all my potential. She channeled more force into her spell, causing the entire cavern to shine brighter than ever, light reflecting off of one gem after another until the cave was shining a brilliant white. Whoa, couldn't the rest of you feel that too? Rainbow gulped as she and Pinky backed into the rest of the group, who were all also huddling close together. Yeah, Applejack nodded. What in tarnation? Twilight turned to them. What? You guys are joking, right? Only unicorns can physically sense another unicorn's magic, unless... She turned to Starlight again. Oh dear. Do you understand now, Sparkle? Starlight smirked. More power than any pony even in their wildest dreams could ever hope to imagine. And only a pony with my capacity could possibly contain it. You possess a similar force hidden deep within you. I can sense it, I can taste it, but you lack the resolve to tap it. You are afraid of what this kind of power will grant you. Afraid of what you may become, but this is the might you must have to even attempt the eastern wasteland. To have any hope of crossing anything, even everything beyond. This is the power your party lacks. Allow me to demonstrate. This whole spiel sounds awfully familiar, don't you think? Rainbow Dash muttered to Applejack. I reckon it does, Applejack sighed. Only this one looks like she can dang well back up her boasting. And she certainly doesn't look like she's going to be creating flowers out of thin air either, Rarity added. More power raged loose from Starlight's horn, almost as if of its own will rather than hers, causing arcs of black and purple magic to dance out around her like lightning and fire. It hummed and churned in the air, causing the hairs on the necks of every pony present to stand on end. Starlight's own party all stood with resolve behind her, speaking to one another in hushed and eager tones. Twilight's party, on the other hand, gathered closer together in anxious worry. TikTok suddenly felt a buzzing sensation in her chest pocket. She took out her mentor's timekeeper as quickly as she could, curious as to what was making it react. A dim green light shined forth from the crack in the hinge. She opened it and her eyes widened. No, that can't be true. That's simply not possible, she whispered to herself. She did a double take between the watch and Starlight's shadow, using her magic to twist knobs and adjust buttons. This blasted thing's just old. There's no way this is right. Starlight's power wafted further out. They could all feel it now, and the power was causing the ground to break beneath her hooves. Lightning cracked forth from her horn and snapped against the cavern walls, loosening rock and gemstone alike, and shattering them to pieces. Dust and dirt crumbled from the ceiling as they could feel the rumbling of the earth beneath them. Twilight stepped forward and said nervously, Okay, you made your point. That's a lot of magic, and you and your friends are more than enough for a match for us. Can we just drop all of this and... You still don't seem to understand, Sparkle, Starlight grinned wide. I claimed I would demonstrate to you what true power is. I am not finished. More and more magic seethed out of her with enough intensity to actually begin to crack and explode in the air around her. Twilight leapt back as a bolt of magical energy lashed out to where she'd been standing, ripping apart the earth like it was paper. The entire cavern began to shake now with unmatched ferocity, causing rocks and gems to fall entirely of their own accord. They gravitated towards the field of powerful magic radiating from Starlight. Crumbling to pieces, they drew close. Twilight called with deep worry, Starlight, enough! You're going to bring down the whole mountain on top of us! I assure you that if that should occur, I possess more than enough capability to shield us all from harm. And when I am through here, you will beg me to allow us to escort you. You will wish you never dared to show such insolence to a goddess amongst ponies. Starlight laughed loudly. Oh, how it feels good to be able to let this all loose again. TikTok watched her stopwatch suddenly turn green and to a bright and alarming red. She looked at Starlight's shadow with a sudden understanding. With a determined frown and a shake of her head, she began to hurriedly adjusting dials again. Rainbow Dash stepped forward. Twilight, she's gone nuts. Do something. Twilight gulped. I don't think I can. What do you mean you don't think you can? Applejack chimed in. You're the element of magic. Show her what's what. Twilight, darling, Rarity pleaded. If there was ever a time for you to be concerned with showing off, now is not that time. There's too much, Twilight said flatly. I don't have that kind of power. She just said you do, Rainbow blurted. You just gotta have faith in it. Use it. This ain't like that time with Trixie, Twi. This is seriously serious. Twilight shook her head. I can't. TikTok stepped forward with a confident stride. Allow me. Every pony in Twilight's group blinked. What? Twilight said first. Trust me, Sparkle, TikTok smiled. I'll get us out of this. She stepped forward further until she was mere feet away from the vortex of magical power and stared straight at Starlight's shadow. The smuggest grin possible was spread across her face. I say, Starlight, it would seem that we might have a teensy little problem here. Yes, Starlight raised an eyebrow. What is he, pitiful plebeian? Well, you see, this magic of yours is bloody impressive and all, but I can see clearly now it's all just for show. You have to admit, your attitudinizing magic is exceptional. You really had me going there for a minute. Twilight hissed in panic. TikTok, what are you doing? This is not an Hush now, Sparkle, TikTok smirked. I've seen my fair share of attitudinizing spells, and I think I know when some pony is using one or not. Fabulous stuff, that. How dare you question me? Starlight glared. You think this is merely an illusion? You miserable little imbecile. This is the rawest magic imaginable, and it's at its absolute finest. Oh yes, sure it is. Twilight, TikTok yawned. Like I said, very good display of attitudinizing magic. Easily one of the best I've seen. See, the thing is, while it's very impressive, I've seen better. This is not an attitudinizing spell, or whatever it is you're saying. Starlight huffed. She turned to her comrades. Curacao, explain to this imbecile that it's not an attitudinizing spell. Curacao hesitated. I have no idea what that even is, ma capitan. Insipid waved her hoof. Does that have something to do with, like, attitudes? I would assume so. Curacao sighed, hoof to face. What do you mean you don't know what it is? Starlight snapped. Y'all got any idea what they're yammering on about? Applejack asked Rainbow Dash in the moment of distraction. Rainbow replied, not a clue. Attitudinizing sounds like some made-up word, though. Rarity made a dainty little cough and drew her attention. Applejack rolled her eyes and leaned over to Rarity. I suppose you all know what it is, then? So, the haze and the word TikTok keeps saying. What kind of spell is it? Attitudinizing. It's kind of like, oh dear. What is it you rough and tumble earth ponies do? It certainly does work very well if I can't remember it. Perhaps Pegasi would be a better example. Rainbow, you're a Pegasus. You know how sometimes you might show off your wings, like really show them off. Rainbow made a noise halfway between a nervous laugh and a defeated sigh. Yeah, I know. Applejack raised an eyebrow. Y'all mean when they get all stiff and stuff? Yes, that's it. That's a physical form of attitudinizing. Or at least that's a term used for magical purposes, as far as I can tell. I understand Pegasi tend to use another name. Rarity continued brightly. Isn't that right, Rainbow Dash? Rainbow coughed nervously into her hooves. Well, it's a sort of courting gesture, understand? Rarity winked. Wait, Rainbow held up a hoof. You're all just yanking my chain, right? No way that's a real word. Attitudinizing? Really? You had me going there for a minute there, guys. Good one. Twilight rolled her eyes and groaned. Oh, it's a real word, alright. Look it up when we get back home. So Starlight is flirting with her? Rainbow blinked. Wait, TikTok's seen better? I know, right? TikTok smirked back. Like I said, I'm not impressed. I am doing no such thing! Starlight screamed, her face a furious red. This is not a... Dreadfully sorry, Starlight dear, but you're not my type, TikTok called. I'm sure you're just the rage back in the city, though. I bet the stallions just come for miles. Hey, Celestia, she's gonna get us all killed. Rainbow Dash put a hoof to her face. Was that double entendre what I think it was? Rarity blinked. Good heavens, most unladylike. Hell hath no fury like a mare scorned, Lockwood gulped. If you all don't mind, I think I'm prepared to switch into panic mode now. Any pony want to join me? Right with you there, old friend, Flatearth nodded. TikTok, she snapped. What Equestria do you think you're doing? TikTok ignored her. In fact, Starlight, I'd go as far as to say I don't think you can do much else with this fancy little display. Bloody shame that, but there it is. I bet you'd be great for Foal's birthday parties, though. This is easily more impressive than any bleeding clown I've ever seen. You'd make some little filial cult very happy, you know? Or maybe you're more suited to adult parties. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You can't be serious, Starlight said flatly. You are serious. How droll. Very serious, in fact, TikTok smirked. Where did you get your training? By the way, I hear the Supreme Sunglow School of Sorcery has a very well-regarded attitudinizing program. Very affordable. You must have graduated top of your class. Colour me impressed. Not impressed enough to go out with you, of course, but you must be joking. This has to be a joke. Starlight turned to Insipid. Insipid, did you hit this delusional idiot on the head once too many? No. Insipid shrugged. Starlight turned back to TikTok. I warn you, I will do so only once, you green-tinted moron. I have a very thin patience, and you are threading dangerously close to a line that you cannot step back across. Shut that impertinent mouth of yours, or I'll shut it for you. Oh, I'm just quaking over here, like a little foal. TikTok laughed. I don't get your knickers in a twist there, Starlight. I'm just saying, I think you're a wimp is all. Why, I bet you couldn't even make me shut this great big mouth of mine, even if you wanted to. Oh, sweet Celestia, she's gonna get us all killed, Rainbow blurted. I was joking before. TikTok, have you gone insane? Flatearth yelled. TikTok, enough, Twilight spat. Trust me, Twilight, TikTok smirked behind her. This feeble show pony couldn't blast her way out of a paper bag, I'm certain of it. Why, I'd bet my life that she doesn't have as much magic in that limp little horn of hers than, say, Fluttershy has in a single feather. Don't you bring Fluttershy into this, Rarity flustered. I don't even have any magic, Fluttershy peeped. Not really, anyway. My point exactly, TikTok laughed. Why, I bet Fluttershy here could cast better spells than you, Starlight, and she doesn't even have a horn. Enough, Starlight snapped. You must have a death wish, you insufferable little idiot. Oh, moving up our insults, are we? Well, take a play of that game, you gibbering git. I'll try to use small words so that you can understand me, you brain-dead buffoon. Oh, my Celestia. Rainbow Dash's jaw dropped. TikTok continued her tirade. What your problem is that you're the single most repulsive creature I've ever seen with my own two eyes. I'd say you were ugly, but that would be insulting the memories of the thousands of mirrors that lost their lives in vain to the sight of your hideous, pus-ridden, foul, grime-encrusted visage. This is not at all something my delicate ears should be hearing, Lockwood hastily said, placing his hooves over Fluttershy's ears. If you're quite finished, I'd like to simply kill Starlight seethed. I wasn't finished, you pathetic excuse for unicorn. TikTok interrupted. Show some manners. You may be able to speak that way to the germ-infested filth that you no doubt bathe in, or the scum-ridden foul grunge that Equestria that likely share your intellect, but you don't get to speak to us normal ponies. Like that to us normal ponies. Our ears don't quite pick up the wavelength of your incoherent dialect. This is getting good, Pinky nodded, reaching for another hoofful of popcorn she'd acquired from nowhere in particular. This is gonna totally be worth getting blasted for. Let her have it, TikTok. Oh, Pinky. At least she's back to normal. Pinky? Rainbow flustered. Keep quiet. You don't want to be a target too. You're nothing more than an egotistical, repugnant, puerile excuse of a pony with nothing good to offer to the world save for being in the absolute lowest bar set for the rest of the universe to measure themselves against. So that even the worst of the worst can breathe a sigh of relief and say, well, at least I'm not Starlight Shadow. And for that I applaud you, you nauseating heap of excrement. Oh man, this is rich. Have it ring snickered into her hooves. This is bucking gold material right here, guys. Should we, do something? Insipid scratched her head. The boss looks totally major pissed. What, and stop the nut job from tearing the boss a verbal new one? Hell no, this is hilarious. Starlight Shadow snapped at the green unicorn. Will you shut up? You must have some sort of bizarre death wish. Oh, forgive me. I said I wouldn't use big words, didn't I? Bloody irresponsible of me. I'll keep it simple then. You're just a colossal clod. A world-class moron. A grade-A Nimrod. An idiot. A stupid idiot. You're nothing more than a knock-kneed, dim-witted, slack-jawed, pug-nosed, malodorous trollop. Rarity swooned. Oh, good heavens. Starlight bellowed. Death wish it is then. Twilight Sparkle, if I were you, I would move yourself and your friends out of the way. Let's not argue with her, Twi, Rainbow Dash hastily said as she dragged Pinky as quickly as she could, and as far as she could away from the line of fire. TikTok, I have no words. Twilight shook her head in disbelief. Oh, don't fret yourself, Twilight, TikTok grinned. Go on, humour the brainless twit. It will make her feel better about herself, and for the universe will thank you. The poor dear must have awfully low self-esteem. TikTok, please, go on and apologise. Twilight pleaded. You just got hit on the head too many times, right? Like Starlight said. Oh goodness, no, I'm quite sane at the moment. TikTok shook her head. Go on then, humour her and move out the way. It will amuse me to see how terribly she can cast the spell. And after all that's happened, I could use a good chuckle. Starlight, Twilight called. Look, maybe we can put all this behind. Too late for apologies, Sparkle. So if you're quite done, Starlight spat with bile and hatred, I have a unicorn to vaporize. Now get out of my way. Twilight gulped and hastily moved to where the rest of her friends had gathered. Shouldn't we do something, Twi? Applejack muttered. Like what? Twilight frowned. Well, okay, good point, Applejack sighed. Starlight collected all of her ambient energy and fired an absolute massive blast of pure magic directly at TikTok. The magical beam tore through the air, sending shockwaves of power ripping outwards and ripping apart the ground and air alike, and making wholly unsettling sound that, if compared to anything, sounded like electricity being forced through dynamite, explosive and crackling with enough energy to demolish the entire city. TikTok smirked. About bloody time. She delivered a final farewell to her mentor's timekeeper before throwing it with all her might directly into the path of the energy blasted screeching towards her. The beam struck the device with a resounding crack and reacted much unlike one would expect of such a meeting. It was more like one would expect to see if some pony were to try and strike a towering iron wall with a little rock no larger than a pebble. Only here, the rock was an immeasurable wave of magical energy, and the wall was just a teeny tiny pocket watch. Lightning of fire and energy and magic and dirt and dust and all manners of magical debris exploded outwards from the point of impact, and in a split second the little stopwatch shattered apart and exploded in such a terrific flash of blinding, brilliant white light that were they all outside, it could have been seen for miles upon miles around. As the light and the smoke cleared, Twilight and her friends unshielded their eyes and cleared their throats in coughing fits. The sight they saw was beyond description, unimaginable, unfathomable, completely impossible, but, as TikTok would say, there it was. The massive burst of magical energy was, for lack of a better way to describe it, frozen in midair, blasting forth from Starlight Shadow's horn like she was some terribly powerful laser cannon. Starlight was there, a look of the purest, most absolutely unadulterated rage spread across her face. Shockwaves of incredible energy spreading out from her, and from the path of energy blast and ripping apart the earth beneath and burning a scar along the cavern floor, all of them frozen, just as the incredible energy beam. Behind her were compatriots, all in various states of being, and all of them just as equally stuck solid in their last actions. Insipid's jaw hung slack as she watched, as if she'd been in the middle of a word of lavish praise or overjoyed excitement. Kurosawa shielded her eyes from the brilliance of the explosion of magic. Havoc watched in eager anticipation, her hoods preparing themselves for a cheer as the burst of magic inevitably ripped apart TikTok's body. Grayscale stood firm and stared forward, expressionless, as always, to the point that one couldn't tell if she was actually frozen or just pretending. Red Velvet was in a more eager state of anticipation than Havocwing, her tongue in her lips as if she'd been caught in the middle of salivating. And yet Twilight and her friends soon found they could all move and breathe and act as normal. TikTok strutted back to them with the same smug smirk on her face that she'd worn when she'd first approached Starlight Shadow. "You're welcome," she said simply. "You've got to be the stupidest pony I've ever met," Flutter blurted. "What in the hell were you thinking?" "Almost gave me a heart attack," Lockwood huffed. "Holy cow, I was afraid that lunatic was going to blow us all up." "I have no idea what's going on," Rainbow awed. "Oh, neat!" Pinkie limped over to Starlight, waving her hoof in front of her face. "This is pretty cool." Twilight blinked. "TikTok, what did you do?" "I activated the Timekeeper's failsafe emergency measure, which only works in the presence of a cataclysmic level void magic event," TikTok explained. Wait, Timekeeper?" Twilight raised an eyebrow. "I thought you said you lost yours." TikTok sighed. "Puta gave me a replacement of sorts. It belonged to my predecessor and mentor. Sadly, I had to destroy it in order to activate the failsafe." "You did that? For us?" Rainbow blinked. "Wow, TikTok, I never knew you had it in you." "Don't get all sappy on me," TikTok laughed. "This is my job, after all. I plan on seeing it through to the end." "So wait, I don't understand," Twilight put her hoof to her chin. "You mentioned void magic. How is that possible?" "Elementary, dear Sparkle." TikTok nodded. "Starlight's magic somehow stems from a void source. I know it's impossible as it sounds, but Timekeeper readings are 100% infallible. This would explain how she has so much power. Void magic is nearly limitless energy, even in tiny amounts, and a body of her size would theoretically contain enough magic to trigger a cataclysmic level event, if prodded." "So what gives with all this?" Fleur asked. Yes, I'd like to know what's going on," Lockwood nodded. "This is very interesting and confusing. The failsafe measure was quite literally reacts with void magic to freeze time for the activating chronomancer and any pony whose magical signature they have registered to their timekeeper. I registered all of you last night while you were sleeping. And I, of course, neglected to register our new friends, so they are unaffected. I never trusted them, and now I guess we can all see that I was right. Fancy that." "So, what does that have to do with all the insults?" Rainbow scratched her head. Yes, I'd like to remind you that was incredibly stupid, Flutter huffed. Stupid, no. Crazy, yes. Crazy clever, if I may be allowed to brag a bit. TikTok waved a hoof. See, the failsafe requires a massive amount of void magic to actually activate. And while she was closing in on that level of magic, she wasn't actually using it. I needed her to give me a source link to the timekeeper too. Hence, I had to goad her into utilising force. Well, that certainly worked. Flutter shook his head. So we're frozen in time? Applejack awed. Golly. Only for a small time frame, TikTok insisted. So if that's out of the way, we should be getting a move on. The spell will wear off in a little while. But we have more than enough time to buy ourselves some distance and seal off our escape route so that they can't follow. Remember, we still have the map, whereas they do not. So we can navigate the caverns perfectly and loop around them. We can still see them on the map after all. Fascinating, Twilight gasped in awe. I knew time alteration spells were possible, but not at this capacity. Why don't we do something to them here? Rainbow blurted, charging over towards Havoc Ringworth. We can, tie them up or something, so they won't waste our time following us. Doesn't work that way, TikTok shook her head. While we're in this time-lapse, we cannot interact with the rest of the world in any way besides moving our own bodies. Pinky knocked her hoof on Starlight's face a couple of times. Yup, she's rock solid. Check it out, guys. She started making obnoxious faces and sounds, at least until Rainbow pulled her away. Oh, come on, Dashi. That was funny. TikTok sighed, which unfortunately also means, yes, we have to abandon our supplies, again. We'll buy ourselves our distance, and as soon as the spell wears off, we seal our path and hustle the rest of the way out. We can grab some water as we go, but food's going to be scarce until we hit Hope's Point. Great, Flutter groaned. We never managed to seem to hang on to anything for longer than a few hours or days at best. Lose half our initial supplies at the gate, half of those at Redblade. And now we lose all our replacement supplies in a stupid cave. Could be worse, Lockwood shrugged. Oh, here we go. Flutter rolled his eyes. Could be. If you say it could be raining one more time, Rainbow threatened. That joke's getting old. Pinky shook her head. She patted a very dejected Lockwood on the shoulder. No, really, Lockwood, sweetheart. Leave the jokes to the professionals. Twilight stamped her hoof. Okay, come on, every pony. Enough joking around. Let's get moving. We need to get as much distance as this spell will avail it to us. How much time do we have? Rarity asked. If it's at all possible, I'd like to have a few more moments to regain my strength. I still feel quite sapped as 'twere. We have roughly 30 minutes or so from the point of activation, TikTok nodded. Give or take depending on sampling errors, which should leave us with, about 27. Not enough time to rest up really. But we have plenty of able-bodied ponies to help those that might be feeling a tad under the weather, so to speak. We only need to gain distance, and even 20 minutes should be more than enough. TikTok froze suddenly and looked directly at Starlight's shadow. Her eyes widened. It was very subtle, but she could see that not only was the magical burst radiating more light than before, but Starlight's eyes seemed to have moved. They were following them. Oh, bugger, TikTok swore. She had more power than I thought. Every pony, run! What's the... Twilight started. TikTok shouted back. Her spell is overpowering the field. It's breaking too soon. Run! So much for a failsafe, Rainbow muttered as she and the others began to run as fast as their hooves could take them. Rainbow scooped up Pinkie... Rainbow scooped up Pinkie Pie on her hooves. Applejack tossed Rarity onto her back. Lockwood followed Rainbow's lead with Fluttershy, and they began to make good on their time to escape. They managed to make it almost a mile further into the cavern before they heard the most spectacular and terrifying explosion behind them. The Starlight's energy blast unfroze itself from time and ripped a hole straight through the mountain, causing the entire cavern to shake violently. No time to dawdle. They could even sound the enraged yell of Starlight's shadow behind them. After them! They ran. The caverns began to crumble around them. We'll never get out of the mountains before the whole thing comes down, Rainbow shouted. TikTok hurriedly looked at a map. This way, it's our only chance. They took a different path. Straight north according to the map's magical compass. Explosions and shouts behind them clued them in that they were not just being pursued, they were being hunted. As they rounded another corner, the cavern's wall suddenly smoothed out and turned to silver, and the gems dwindled instantly to nothing. They didn't have time to ask questions or wonder why they just pressed on. I see them! They heard Havocwing call. Then they heard the distinct explosion of the Pegasus's rocket technique as she barreled forward to catch up. Ah, horse apples! Applejack swore. Twilight was the first to go through, followed by Applejack and Flathoof, Rainbow and Pinky, so on and so forth. For the brief second they passed through a grooved section, and they felt a strange feeling wash over them that was gone in an instant. TikTok was the last that passed through, as she tripped over the grove. TikTok! Her friends all shouted in unison. Gotcha! Havocwing called as she closed in. Smack! Havocwing slammed straight into something that was totally invisible to every pony, slowly sliding downwards into a screeching noise. With a screeching noise. TikTok didn't waste time in questioning it, and got to her horse and ran after her friends into the darkness of the smoothed cavern ahead. Starlight and the others caught up to Havocwing, who was now busy angrily lobbing fireballs at the hallway, ignoring the fact that they were rebounding off and exploding on the cavern walls. Havocwing! Starlight snapped. Did you lose them? No way, boss, Havocwing hurriedly answered. They went through here, but there's some sort of thing in the way. Starlight glared at the hall. A force field? Fools! She charged the spell. Watch, and the spell was fired, and as soon as it hit the spot aligned with the groove, absolutely nothing happened. Learn? Starlight blinked. Havocwing stared a moment. Was something supposed to happen? Starlight shook her head. Must be a truly invisible barrier. I didn't even see it get dispelled. Go on, Havocwing. Test it. What? Test it? Starlight narrowed her eyes. See if my dispel worked. Oh, okay. Havocwing flustered and chuckled a tiny... Havocwing flustered. She chucked a tiny fireball straight at it. It bounced off and blew up in the face of Insipid, who screeched and frantically rubbed her face to clear it of soot. Oops? Havocwing shrugged, barely containing a laugh. Impossible! Starlight flustered. Simply impossible! She fired another spell. Nothing. Another. Nothing. Another. Nothing. This continued on for several minutes before Curacao stepped forward. Ma Capitan? What? Can't you see that I'm busy? Starlight snapped. Oui, but this seems to be, something beyond your great and insurmountable power, no? Perhaps something about this barrier cannot be affected with magic. Similar to the gate back at home. This is the entrance to the Griffin ruins. Perhaps some pony would know better how to proceed. And that is supposed to mean what exactly? Starlight glared. Are you saying that my magic is flawed? Inferior? No, not at all, ma Capitan. Merely that this force is beyond our understanding, oui? Curacao coughed. Who could simply know more about magic than me? Well, perhaps the one who builds the gate would know how to deal with this sort of problem, no? Starlight grumbled. You are suggesting that we inquire as to this with Father? Curacao said very simply, oui. Starlight impatiently stamped her hoof. Absolutely not. I will not risk learning of our failures. Wait, I will not risk him learning of our failures. Why, just imagine how he would punish you all. I have nothing to fear, of course, but Havocwing rolled her eyes. Relax, boss. He'll understand. It ain't our fault there's this field in the way. He might know a way through. Besides, they can't have gone too far. We'll catch him on the other side of the mountain. No big deal. Starlight huffed. If you're so confident, then fine. Let's go see Father. Aw, boss, Insipid whined. I don't want to walk all the way back. Curacao put her hoof on her face. Ma copine, The Capitan knows teleportation magic. She can whisk us back there in an instant. Oh, good. Inspid nodded. Phew, I was totally worried there for a second. Walking again ooh, no, totally major lame-o. Starlight furiously channeled another spell, and she and all her group glowed a bright, brilliant white, and then were gone in a flash. Shroud was always finding herself saddled with more paperwork than she felt one mare was capable of doing. But somehow she always managed to come through. If there was one thing she'd learned from years of experience as Lord Silvertongue's personal secretary, it was that diligence and hard work paid off, and that complaining did not. Days earlier in the week there had been nothing but excitement. She'd never seen her boss so active in those few days, but the past few he'd been strangely quiet, locked in his private quarters and rarely taking meals, and even rarely leaving. It made the overworked unicorn mare a little nervous. Was he upset with something? With some pony? She shook her head and flicked her sweaty red mane out of her eyes. There was no time for that. He still expected his daily reports on city activity as he had been for as long as she had been in his employ, and categorizing everything that had happened in a single day in the chaotic little burg was a monumental task. Today had been nothing but boredom laid on boredom, with the exception of the past 10 minutes or so. Reports were filling in rapidly now, and she could see that on the news channels plastered on the various television sets had been she had set up. Now an incident had occurred. Witnesses reported sighting of a massive blast of magic ripping across the sky above the city, tearing through the smog and even the cloud of magic further above that and exposing the real sky through the gaping hole it left in its wake. Had the angle of the blast had been a few degrees lower, experts say, it would have tore a path directly through this city walls and likely most of the mid-east district. The air inside the tiny office cracked and sizzled, and in a flash, where there had been one pony, there were now 7. Shroud was used to teleportation theatrics. Silvertongue himself often paid personal visit to her when he needed clarification or confirmation on certain documents, and as such she did not react strongly to a sudden influx of magic. She recognised the 6 mares that had just warped in as well, and was surprised to see them. Silvertongue's supposed adopted daughters, if she was not mistaken. Where they'd come from in the first place was beyond her. She was not privy to that information. The purple one, Starlight Shadow, if she remembered correctly, stepped forward and, with a determined look on her face, she asked with a very simple question. "Where is our father? We wish to speak with him." Shroud raised an eyebrow, surprised at the unicorn's bluntness and stern voice. She sounded just like Silvertongue did when he was particularly aggravated. "Forgive me, ladies, but Lord Silvertongue must be in his chambers for the past 2 days, and he hasn't been accepting visitors of any kind. Even I haven't seen or heard of anything from..." "Come along, girls," the purple unicorn stated firmly to the others. She wandered over to them with a bright flash from her horn. They were gone again as quickly as they had came. "No, wait!" Shroud called, but they were gone. She shook her head and got back to work. There was too much work to do to worry about little things like this, and Silvertongue always did seem to raise in spirits when those 6 were involved. He wouldn't be upset with her. Would he? Silvertongue threw another datapad aside. It landed in the pile behind him, which was slowly gaining enough girth that it took up the entire corner of this very large personal chambers, stretching up high towards the ceiling and towering over any average-sized pony that may have happened to enter. Pulling another datapad to him from the slowly emptying shelf near his desk, he set it upon the said desk and began to peruse with diligent determination. His eyes flickered back and forth across the words on the page-like display, his magic holding it steady and scrolling down as he read. His normal eye was bloodshot and half-lidded, exhausted from the days without rest. His other eye, the new one, with the blackened sclera, and the golden iris, and the golden irisless pupil was not so tired in appearance, and in fact seemed to be growing more healthy by the day. The golden pupil was now normal-sized, but no longer a tiny speck in the darkness. His hair was ragged and sloppy. His coat was dragged and dirty from days without washing, and his normally impeccable black and red uniform was disheveled and had no luster whatsoever. With a grumble, he threw the new data pen aside and reached out for another to replace it. His thoughts were dashed when he heard the crackling of air behind him in his quarters. His golden pupil pulsed wildly, and a smile crept upon his face. Starlight Shadow had arrived. He could recognize that unique magic of hers anywhere. He turned to the slowly warping in figures of the 6 mares he had pinned such high hopes on. He was curious why they were here, though. The teleportation completed, and the 6 mares stepped forward to attention instantly, though they all eyed him with varying expressions of worry and curiosity. "Ah, my daughters, you have returned, and so soon," Silvertongue nodded with an unusually proud smile. "This is quite the surprise. Oh, but such long faces on you all. Is there something the matter? Go on then, out with it." "Father," Starlight Shadow bowed slowly. "If you don't mind my asking, are you well? You appear to be, "You look like hell, Pops," Havokwing blurted. Starlight shot her a look, making Havokwing shrug nervously. "What? Some pony needed to say it." "Of course. Well, over the scant few days since your departure, I have busied myself with researching some personal matters, private curiosities, nothing more than that, I'm afraid. I do suppose I look rather unprofessional, my daughters. I apologize if I am causing any worry. What my research entails is of no concern to any of you, though. So do not fret upon it. I am merely being perhaps too diligent, but my private business can wait. Your business is significantly more important to me at the moment, anyhow, and I do so wish to hear about it. Now then, you have returned? I can assume that your mission was a success?" Starlight Shadow shifted nervously. "Right. Well, Father, you see, we seem to have encountered a minor conundrum." Silvertongue's smile faded. "A conundrum, you say? Whatever seems to be the problem? Don't tell me that you did not encounter your targets." "Oh no, we managed to rendezvous with them, Father," Starlight nodded. "They encountered some trouble while crossing Red Blade Mountains." "So they did take the Red Blade route," Silvertongue mused. "That Chronomancer is gutsier than I initially had been led to believe. Curious, but no matter. You managed to link up with their party. What happened then? Did your attempts to persuade them not take hold?" Starlight looked to the others in her group and nodded firmly. "It is our belief that the situation was well under control. A few more days and there is no doubt that they would have surely fallen into our grasp completely. I fail to see then where there could have been a problem. A bit of a disagreement occurred between us and those other 6, Starlight said, carefully. Goddamn yawning. At first it was met with words, and shortly after with actions. I regret that we were unable to avoid it, Father, but I see, Silvertongue frowned. Most troubling indeed. We then attempted to capture them and deliver them here to you. We still intend for that to be our next move, but Starlight hesitated. They retreated into the Griffin ruins, judging from my and Curaçao's directions. Curaçao turned to the others and shrugged rather incredulously. She'd been the one to determine where they'd lost their quarry, not Starlight. There was some manner of force field around it, and even my immeasurable magic could not pierce it. We were hoping that you would be able to concoct a solution. Silvertongue waved a hoof. That is of minor importance. The barrier surrounding the ruins is of a most ancient magic, far beyond your understanding. It is truly unbreakable, but that leads me to wonder how those 6 and their friends too, you say, how did they venture past the threshold? Perhaps it was something to do with... as I said, no matter. You will surely encounter them again in the near future. So this is only a minor delay at best. Starlight looked to the others and raised an eyebrow. Oh, so you're not upset? Silvertongue laughed. Upset? Oh, my dear Starlight Shadow, I am absolutely furious right now. Starlight gulped. Furious, father? You don't look mad, Pops. Havitwing chuckled nervously. Yes, he does, Grayscale said very simply. I can see it in his eyes. Eye. It astounds me to no end how every single time those 6 men become involved, or that accursed Chronomancer as well, I have seen to have the most astoundingly poor performances from my subordinates. Subordinates who have never once failed me have suddenly become as much as useless fools in the wake of things. I'm beginning to think that there is some higher power at work here, trying to protect them from my plans for them. Silvertongue ranted. He breathed a sigh of calm and spoke as cordially as he could to the 6 mayors before him. Now then, I suppose it would do good to remind you that they will have to leave the ruins eventually to cross the eastern wasteland, if they hope to reach their destination. You are all to wait for them there and deliver them back here to me, as you intended. What little time you managed to spend with them has likely already placed the seeds of corruption in their minds. I will simply force those seeds to blossom. Oh, well, if that's all you require of us, Starlight nodded, we'll just take our leave, father. Forgive us for hold, Silvertongue said firmly. I wish to have more detailed reports of what happened, of what instigated this mishap. I am tired of wasting resources on those 6 and not getting results, and I need to know why I'm not getting results. So please, explain to me exactly how you failed. Well, they escaped when they retreated through the force field. Starlight nervously tapped her hoof to her chin, trying her best not to look at any pony in the group. I did not believe they knew the force field was even present. They appeared as surprised as we were when they witnessed it. Yeah, that Chronomancer looked like she was ready to die when I got to her, Havitwing explained. Then I ran into, hit the force field with a fireball. Not my face or anything lame like that. You said this all occurred after you were forced to take actions against them. What allowed them to escape your grasp? Silvertongue asked. The Chronomancer, Starlight sneered. She used that little stopwatch to do something. I reacted against my magic and let them freeze or manipulate time somehow. If my theory is correct, I overpowered the spell and saw them flee just barely, but the effect was too potent and they acquired an insurmountable lead. Silvertongue swore. Damn that blasted Chronomancer. She is an ever-present thorn in my side, and I grow tired of hearing of it. Seeing as I have altered your orders to capture them rather than infiltrate, there is no need to be cordial with that infuriating little saboteur there any longer. Her friends will likely not treat you with the goodwill, even if you left her alive at this point. So when you encounter them again, I want that Chronomancer destroyed. Do you understand me? With pleasure, father. Starlight nodded with a wide grin. She needs to learn her place, anyhow. Now then, what exactly instigated the fight? If your bonding with them was proving as fruitful as you claim, I see no reason why things would have needed to come to blows. Yes, well, Starlight hesitated. She was hesitant to implicate Red Velvet, if only because she was worried about appearing unable to control those under her command. But Silvertongue's pressing glare left her little choice. She pointed her hoof at Velvet. This bumbling buffoon went and disobeyed my direct orders. I told her with no uncertainty that she was to continue her assignment on Pinkie Pie, despite the fact that she was showing an astounding lack of progress. In a fit of insubordinate behaviour, she attempted to utilise her power of persuasion against Fluttershy, Havitwing's target. And I was doing just fine on my own, Dad. I didn't need no help from no pony, Havitwing boasted. Starlight nodded back to her, making Havitwing beam for a moment. Starlight continued with a pained determination. Velvet's disobedience caused Twilight and some of her friends to think that perhaps we weren't entirely trustworthy or safe to be around. Her blunder cost us a great deal of progress, and it is her fault that we arrived to this current dilemma. Velvet flustered. That's a load of horse apples. If you hadn't gone all superpowered, the Chronomancer would never have had a chance to stop us. You should have let me just finish my job, and whose fault is it that I had to flaunt my power in the first place, Starlight glared. If you'd maintained a little self-control, I might not have had to keep you in line. If I had never needed to assert my authority, they would never have known about how much power I have. Without knowing what I was capable of, that Chronomancer would never have been given the opportunity in the first place. I still don't know even how she did it. You started a chain of events that put us in this bind, Velvet. Don't try to pass the blame onto me because of your own sloppy behaviour. Is all of this true, Red Velvet? Silvertongue frowned. Velvet stammered. Well, you see, did you disobey your younger sister's orders? My orders? Well, I guess, but Silvertongue sighed. My dear Velvet, I knew you possessed a great potential within you for unchecked violence and incredible power. Of all of you, you were the one that I was most convinced might someday wield as much power as your younger sister. I had higher hopes for you than any other, but I did not think your lust for blood would cloud your judgment. I am disappointed. Daddy, Velvet sniffed. Please don't be mad at me. Come on, you don't understand that the pink idiot was incorruptible with my standard techniques. I had to step over the line. I had to. There was no other way. Excuses tire me so. I hear them time again when my orders go unfulfilled. I grew weary of hearing them so long ago, and I have no desire to hear them today. Silvertongue's horn glowed a deep red, and he took a single half step forward. Velvet took a full step back, and the other 5 men slowly began to distance themselves from her. None of them liked where this was going. I suppose there is a lesson in all of this, though, for me, and for you. Some ponies need a lesson for today. My dear Velvet, as for me, my lesson I have already learnt. And it is to not play favourites. I must treat you all the same as I treat all those who serve me, even if you are amongst my most cherished. I have said before to you all that I do not tolerate failures. I punish them. A sharp bolt of lightning leapt out of his horn and struck Velvet with enough intensity to knock her into the adjacent wall with a resounding crack, knocking dust from the wall and causing all the myriad of paintings there to dislodge and fall to the floor. The other mares all jumped back in sudden surprise. Silvertongue took a full step forward, as Velvet slowly tried to stand upright, her legs shaking in frenzied panic. Oh, God damn it. Alright, I'm back. Okay. Were it any pony else, she'd feel the familiar rush of anger and would have lashed out against them, but he was her father, and he'd made her feel pain. Real pain. Pain beyond the physical. All of my great many efforts laid aside by a single careless action. Another bolt of lightning blasted against Velvet, knocking her back into the wall. This time, she actually grunted in pain. The force from the impact felt like it had cracked the bone. A single mistake. She hissed in pain and tried to stand back up, only for him to blast her again. She elected not to attempt to rise this time, instead squirming on the floor under the bolt's sparkling sputters and hisses. A mistake that I will rectify. The spark shot forth again and slammed her against the wall with enough force to shake the entire room, causing the mighty datapad pile to shudder and loosen. The electricity shot through her body with enough voltage that an average pony would likely have gone into shock from just the pain alone. Silvertongue did not let up on his discharge this time, the electricity slowly snaking up the wall with her and shooting out sparks that singed the floor. She jerked and shuddered as wave after wave of fierce electricity racked her body. "Daddy, please!" Velvet pleaded with a scream of agony. She clenched her teeth and thrashed about some more as another pulse of power ripped through her. Starlight Shadow watched with indiscernible flat look on her face, determined to look as firm and solid as she'd always been instructed. Her other subordinates all watched with mixed reactions as well, not one of them positive. Grisco remained as stoic as ever, with only her eyes betraying her feelings of anxiety and remorse. Curacao found herself unable to hide her utter repulsion with what she was witnessing. And Insipid beside her shared the much same idea, even if she looked more awed than repulsed. Even Havocwing did not look at all pleased if anything. The sour look on her face made her look disgusted and confused. Velvet had messed up bad, they all knew it, but they weren't sure this was what they wanted to see happen to her. Punishment, sure, but this was torture. Velvet writhed against the wall in pain, trying to hold on to something to keep her from being lifted into the air by the power of Silvertongue's magic. Her wounds reopened entirely of their own accord, soaking her clothes with blood that dripped and burned around her, filling the air with a uniquely pungent odour that was most unpleasant to everybody else. Silvertongue's frown slowly crept into a smirk as he let loose more and more power. It had been so long since he punished any pony himself, he'd forgotten the rush. He allowed Velvet to fall to the floor, stopping his torture for a moment. She shuddered and groaned in pain, not even bothering to regain her footing, remaining instead huddled on the floor, clinging to herself as if hoping to keep herself from falling apart. Silvertongue charged up another bolt, the power gathering in his horn tip, and fired again. To his surprise, the electrical burst was reflected mere inches away from its target, bouncing off a magical barrier and ricocheting into the nearby wall and burning a hole into the wallpaper. Silvertongue frowned deeply and turned to Starlight Shadow, whose horn was aglow with magic of her own. "Starlight, what exactly do you think you're doing?" he sneered. His golden pupil pulsed rapidly, growing in size until it was almost completely obscuring the darkness behind it. His horn glowed brighter than ever, a fierce anger within him that he could not describe. "Father, I think she's had enough." "Enough," Starlight said as firmly as she could. By now, Curacao and Insipid had rushed over to Velvet's side and were trying to help her up. Her mane and coat were singed and her body was bloodied and beaten, and the reek of burnt blood permeated about her like a foul cloud. She could barely stand on her own, and her eyes had become sullen and hollow. Silvertongue laughed a cold laugh. "Enough! My dearest daughter, you do not get to tell me what is enough." "She's my responsibility, father. It should fall to me to punish her if I were so inclined." Starlight stood tall. "And I think she's had enough." Silvertongue looked at her with frustrated scrutiny, and in a fit of realization after looking into her eyes only for a moment, he grit his teeth and turned away. "I see. So be it then, Starlight, you have made your point. Your flock is yours to command and to punish as you see fit, but just know, this means that in the future, any punishments I would lay upon your subordinates, I shall instead lay solely upon you. That is the responsibility of the leader you so desire to be, is it not? Now, you have amended your orders. Carry them out. I have other business to attend to, and I wish not to be disturbed. Leave me." "Father," Starlight stepped forward, "please, I merely wanted to assert the authority you had bestowed upon me. I did not mean to call into question. Please, do not be upset with. I said leave me. When I see you next, you had better be carrying those 6 with you, and I'd better have that chronomancer's head on my desk. Do you understand?" Starlight frowned. "Yes, father. Come along, girls. We must formulate our next plan of action." Starlight's brilliant light shined and enveloped herself and her companions. They were gone in an instant. Silvertongue breathed out a long last angry breath, and in a fit of rage he latched out onto his desk with his magic and flung it out the window, shattering several feet of glass. His breaths were ragged and short, a great and furious anger spreading through him like never before. Silvertongue walked over to the nearby wall and pressed upon the button on the intercom there. "Shroud," he said fiercely into it. Yes, my lord? Shroud's voice came from the other end, a hint of surprise and worry in it. I need to attend a meeting with Dr. Blutsauger. Send up a fresh uniform for me. Yes, of course, my lord. Shall I summon him for... No need. I'll be meeting him personally, Silvertongue hissed. And do not inform him of my coming either. Just send up my uniform, Shroud. That will be all. As you wish, my lord. Her voice gulped from the other end. Silvertongue's teleportation spell cut out, leaving him standing rather suddenly just outside the office door of the Chief of Medicine of Pandemonium Medical, at the Central General location. He did not waste any time, immediately walking straight through the doors and drawing the sudden attention of the secretary, who'd been lazily slumped over her desk, fiddling with her pen. Oh, she flustered. Do you have an appointment? I have no need of one, Silvertongue said firmly, not stopping in stride. Oh, well, begging your pardon, the doctor is busy at the moment. He'll have the time to see me. He's in a very important my matters are more important than his. And just who do you think you are? You can't just... He turned towards her, horn aglow, knocking her back in her seat and tumbling over onto the floor, creating a great deal of ruckus as datapads and folders fell from nearby shelf. I am not in a pleasant mood at the moment, you pathetic little pencil pusher. Just keep your mouth shut and lest you share the doctor's fate. In a daze, she simply waved him on and amidst the hurried mutterings and panicked movements from the office proper. Silvertongue pushed open the doors into Blutsauger's private office and caught the good doctor hastily fiddling with his lab coat and coming out of the back room, his face covered in sweat and lipstick smears tainting his own lips and the collar of his coat. When he looked into Silvertongue's direction, his glasses nearly slid fully off the bridge of his nose, and his jaw dropped halfway to the floor. He was caught completely by surprise, not only at the visit, but who the visitor was. Herr Silvertongue? He snapped. This is most unannounced. Such a random visit. I suspected the committee had sent an investigator to investigate my personal affairs, yeah? To what do I owe the pleasure? Doctor, it seems I've caught you with your pants down, as the saying goes. The pleasure of the flesh can wait, Doctor. Silvertongue sneered with disdain. Tell your patient to leave. We have important matters to discuss, and I don't wish for your two-bit hussy to participate in any of it. Blutsauger gulped. Yeah. He hurriedly rushed back into the rear room and rushed through a very hushed discussion, then returned into his office, still straightening his coat and glasses and busily wiping lipstick from his face with a sanitary wipe. Behind him, a white Pegasus mare rushed past, darting as quickly as she could past the doctor and Silvertongue, fumbling with her nurse's uniform as she ran by. Silvertongue did not avert his gaze from Blutsauger's cowering. Anxious from the nervous doctor fumbled his buttons closed unevenly and desperately tried to smooth his hair. Now, that you are alone, Herr Silvertongue. I suppose you wanted to see me for something of critical importance. We seem to have encountered a problem, Doctor, Silvertongue said simply. Well, more accurately, you seem to have encountered a problem. But it is that the same problem that is causing me a great deal of vexation. A problem, Herr Silvertongue? Oh, the nurse? Well, you see, sometimes I have the urges, and not the whore, you blithering idiot! Silvertongue put a hoof to his face. Our creations, the 6 clones I tasked you with creating. There is a critical flaw that needs immediate addressing. Blutsauger was surprised, but hid it well. Yeah, Herr Silvertongue. Let me pull up the files I set aside in my personal computer. He flustered nervously at the last words and hoped Silvertongue hadn't noticed. Of course Silvertongue noticed everything. You have their data in your personal files, Doctor? He asked with a raised eyebrow. Bloodsucker's eyes darted back and forth quickly. Just in case I ever needed to duplicate the procedure. Silvertongue's eyes narrowed. That data isn't for you to create your own personal harem, is it? If that's... Nine. I'll just look up the information, yeah? He trotted over quickly to his computer station and clicked through several layers of documents and folders and hidden folders and encoded files until he at last reached what he was looking for. He looked through them briefly and nodded to Silvertongue. That seems to be the matter with them. There was an incident today. I reprimanded one of them for it, and Starlight expressed concern over my methods. Bloodsucker raised an eyebrow. She questioned you, Herr Silvertongue? Yes, Doctor, she questioned me. I do hate to repeat myself, so please do pay attention. The Doctor tried his best to be dismissive without sounding condescending. I do not see how that is a problem in and of itself. She has a great amount of pride, yeah? And she is quite powerful, too. It would stand to reason that she would try to assert her authority, even if it does over you, Herr Silvertongue, yeah? That she questioned me is not the matter of my concern. It is why she questioned me. I saw it there, in her eyes. Concern, Doctor. Concern? Concern, genuine concern. Not for her authority being overruled, not for herself being reprimanded for questioning me. Nothing so irrelevant. She was concerned for the well-being of the one I had punished. I recognize that look, Doctor, all too well. Bloodsucker raised his eyebrow again. I do not understand her. When I asked you to engineer them, I was giving you assurance that they were perfect clones. Isn't that right? The Doctor hastily nodded. Yeah, that is correct. They are my finest work. Absolutely flawless copies, just as you asked for. Then it would seem you missed something. My magic was impeccable. The power behind it was limitless in all aspects, and was flawless in taking every single quality of the original bodies and minds and corrupting them in perfect opposites. Twilight Sparkle was dedicated to her friends and their well-being in every way imaginable. All of them are. Twisting that upon itself should have left mares that were only concerned for themselves, not for their companions. Their only reason for working together was because I wished it. I noticed that Insipid had an obsession with Curacao, but we already attributed that to her wanting nature. That leaves no excuse for the others, no excuse for Starlight Shadow. Why would she show any amount of concern for the well-being of her subordinate? To her, they should all be nothing more than tools, as she herself is to me. Bloodsucker reviewed his files as carefully as he could. He could see nothing wrong with any of the data. I do not know, Herr Silvertongue. The cloning process was perfect in every way. There is no anomalies, no complications, nothing of the sort. They were perfect, Herr Silvertongue. I do not know why they would be showing signs of imperfection, but it has nothing to do with the clones and of themselves. Silvertongue glared. Perhaps then something on my end of the equation is causing this dilemma, Doctor. Bloodsucker flustered. 9! I merely suggested that the cloning was so perfect to the point that perhaps they are growing as individuals, that they are not as single-minded as we hoped for. Silvertongue turned his head in thought and muttered to himself more than anybody else. An interesting theory. Perhaps being around the elements of harmony has uncorrupted my creations? Most troubling indeed, as highly unlikely as it is. Well, as you say, it is just a theory, Herr Silvertongue. I have no way of proving it without observing them in their element, so to say. I lack the resources to carry out such a task. Maybe you do, but I don't. It would seem that I need eyes and ears to keep tabs on them, to see what has transpired in just a few short days' time. Perhaps it's time I activated my contingency plan. Contingency plan? Bloodsucker raised an eyebrow. Oh, nothing of your concern, Doctor. I will see to it that the elements of discord are studied and that I can find where the problem is, that I may rectify it. Until then, though, I must operate under the assumption that the problem's source comes from their creation, not their growth or function. See, it is still my theory that something went wrong in the cloning process, and that is why my perfect little creations have suffered this grave imperfection. This throws all my plans to the wind, Doctor, and as far as I'm concerned, it is your fault. Bloodsucker panicked. But Herr Silver, and with no way of to remedy the situation whatsoever either, Doctor. Well, forgive me for using a tired old cliché, but it would seem you have outlived your usefulness. Herr Silver... Ah! A fearsome pain snapped through Bloodsucker's body with an alarming speed, shredding and burning the Doctor's lab coat and shattering his glasses. Silvertongue's horn glowed brighter than ever before as he sent torrents upon torrents of overwhelming magical force coursing through the Doctor's pathetically squirming figure. His eyes pulsed in excitement, growing ever larger as Bloodsucker's screams filled the air until the entire socket was filled with a brilliant gold. His mouth curved into a sadistic smile. He enjoyed this. How he'd ever forgotten the pleasure of inflicting pain directly beyond him. Had it always felt this good? With a satisfying hissing, popping noise, the Doctor's body fell limp in the air, and his eyes dimmed completely, blood seeping from his ears and mouth and eyes, and Silvertongue tossed him callously aside like a discarded toy, breaking apart the Doctor's carefully decorated wall and causing jars of organs to come crashing down upon and around him. Thank you ever so much for your work, though, Doctor. I do appreciate the touch-up to my face. Silvertongue sneered at the Doctor's lifeless corpse. But it would seem the city needs to find a new chief of medicine. Alright, that was Crossed Equestria, chapter 17. Unfortunately, it would seem my reading is not getting better, which is slightly annoying, but there you go. Thank you for listening, I hope you enjoyed that. Keep on spreading the magic of friendship, and I'll see you next time.